"Guess my name and I'll marry you," she laughed, then he said it. Alien girl jokes she'd marry the human if he guessed her real name. Imagine her face when the drop pod hurtled through the disputed territories of the outer ring, its metal hull scorched by atmospheric entry inside the cramped cockpit. Liriana's sunset-colored skin seemed to glow against the dim emergency lighting. Her silvery white hair cascaded over her shoulders as she adjusted the navigation controls with practiced precision. "Your human names are so predictable, chubby," she said, turning to face her co-pilot with a playful smirk. James Michael John. "So boring and uninspired." The human male sitting opposite her raised an eyebrow. Commander Nathan Reed, a former Special Forces operative of the Terran Alliance, was not a man easily provoked. His clothes, cropped auburn hair and light stubble, framed a face that had seen its share of battles. The black tactical vest over his sleeveless shirt did little to hide the muscular definition of his arms as he crossed them over his chest. "And I suppose agendary names are the height of creativity," he replied, his deep voice carrying just enough sarcasm to make Liriana narrow her eyes. Their relationship had always been strictly professional, sometimes even tense. As representatives of their respective governments on this joint reconnaissance mission, they maintained a careful distance despite the obvious attraction that simmered beneath their interactions. Liriana's deep green combat suit hugged her athletic figure, the intricate technological detailing along its seams glowing faintly. Strategic sections around her abdomen, shoulders and thighs remained exposed, a design choice that Nathan had initially questioned as impractical but had since learned was traditional for Shandari warriors. "My true name," Liriana continued, gazing thoughtfully out the viewport at the sun-scorched desert landscapes below. "His is a song of the stars from my birth. It contains the harmonic resonance of the celestial bodies that aligned when I drew my first breath." She turned back to him, her expression suddenly mischievous. "I swear by the ancestors, if a human male could guess it by our ancient lore, I would be bound to him for life." Nathan, normally reserved and focused on the mission, surprised her with a slow smile. Something in his eyes shifted, a glint of knowledge that made Liriana's confidence waver. Without hesitation he opened his mouth and produced a complex multilayered sound, a melodic pattern that shimmered like distant starlight, rising and falling in perfect harmonic intervals that no human vocal cords should have been able to produce. Liriana's eyes widened in shock, her mouth opened slightly and a flush of deeper orange spread across her sunset skin. "How?" she whispered, unable to tear her gaze from him. "How do you know that?" The question hung in the air between them as the drop pod continued its descent toward the neutral zone. Their cargo they transported, supposedly routine supplies for the joint Terran-Jandari outpost, suddenly seemed far less important than the secret Nathan apparently carried. Before he could answer, proximity alarms blared through the cockpit. Nathan's focus immediately shifted to the controls. "Proximity alert," he announced, all playfulness gone from his voice. "We've got company." Liriana snapped back to a professional mode, though her eyes still held questions. "Unidentified craft at 2 o'clock. Not broadcasting any recognition codes." "Pirates," Nathan suggested, already plotting evasive maneuvers, or worse, Liriana replied grimly. "This sector has seen increased Draxian activity. They'd love to get their hands on our cargo." As they prepared for potential combat, the moment of personal revelation receded, but not forgotten. Something fundamental had shifted between them, a new dynamic that would inevitably resurface once the immediate danger passed. Nathan's fingers flew across the control panel. "Hang on," he warned, pulling the pod into a steep dive. "This is going to get interesting." Liriana's lips curved into a determined smile as she activated the weapons systems. "It always does when you're involved, human." The desert below rushed up to meet them as Nathan pushed the small craft to its limits, leaving their pursuers struggling to match the aggressive maneuver. Whatever secrets lay between them would have to wait. Survival came first. The drop pod skimmed over the jagged rock formations of the neutral zone, its engines straining against Nathan's aggressive evasive maneuvers behind them. The unidentified craft struggled to match their descent path through the narrow canyons. There, Liriana pointed to a shadowed alcove beneath an overhanging cliff. "We can lose them in the magnetic interference from those mineral deposits." Nathan nodded, swinging the craft sharply toward the natural shelter. "Good eye, the ferromagnetic content should mask our signature." He guided the pod into the concealed space with precision that impressed even Liriana, who had witnessed His piloting skills on previous missions. As the engines powered down, they sat in tense silence monitoring their pursuers on the tactical display. "They are circling," Nathan whispered, though there was no need for quiet. "Looks like they are not sure where we went." Liriana released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Standard pirate behavior. They'll search for an hour or two, then move on to easier prey. The confined space of their cockpit suddenly felt much smaller as the immediate danger passed, leaving them alone with the unresolved tension from earlier. Liriana's gaze flickered to Nathan, who was studiously focused on the sensor readings. "We should conserve power," he said, shutting down non-essential systems. "Extraction team won't reach us until tomorrow at their earliest." The cockpit dimmed to emergency lighting, casting soft shadows across Nathan's features in the reduced light. Liriana's skin took on a deeper, almost crimson hue, so she finally said, breaking the weighted silence, "Are you going to tell me how you know my true name?" Nathan's hand stilled on the control panel. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Would you believe me if I said I heard it in a dream?" "No," she replied flatly, his lips quirked into a half-smile. "Fair enough." He leaned back in his seat, considering her. 3 years ago I was part of a joint Terran Shindari operation on Proxima Station. There was a diplomatic reception for your father's delegation." Liriana's eyes widened. "You were there? I don't remember seeing you." "You wouldn't have. I was security detail stationed behind the scenes." His gaze grew distant with the memory during the ceremonial naming ritual for the new trade agreement. "Your father spoke your true name as part of the blessing." "That's impossible," Lana whispered. "No human ear could capture the harmonic complexities of a Shindari true name from hearing it once." Nathan's expression grew serious. "You're right, a normal human couldn't." The implication hung between them as Liana studied his face. "You're not normal, are you?" "I was part of a classified program," he admitted. "Neural enhancement, auditory processing modifications. I can hear frequencies beyond normal human range and reproduce them perfectly." "They modified Yulana couldn't hide her shock. In Sinandari culture, such alterations would be considered sacrilege," volunteered he. Corrected. "Earth needed soldiers who could operate effectively alongside alien allies, understanding their languages, even the ones considered impossible for humans, was a priority." Liriana processed this revelation, her cultural beliefs wearing with her growing fascination with this human. "So you knew all along about our tradition?" Nathan nodded slowly. "I did, but I never intended to use it like this." He gestured between them. "It just slipped out when you challenged me, and now we're bound," she said softly, the implication settling over her. According to her people's oldest laws, their souls were now connected in a bond more profound than any marriage contract. The drop pod's environmental system hummed softly as temperatures outside plummeted with the setting sun. Inside, the small space grew noticeably cooler. "Temperature is dropping," Nathan observed, checking the readings. "Life support is conserving power. We should." He hesitated. "We should stay close for warmth." Liriana felt a flutter of something unfamiliar in her chest, anticipation mixed with uncertainty. "Practical," she agreed, though they both knew it was more than that. She moved from her seat to join him, their bodies fitting together awkwardly at first in the cramped space. Nathan's arm wrapped around her shoulders, and she was surprised by the natural heat his human body radiated. "Your people run hot," she murmured instinctively, pressing closer. "And yours are surprisingly cool to the touch," he replied, his voice low near her ear. The desert night descended around their hidden shelter, stars appearing in the viewport above them. Liriana found herself tracing their constellations with her eyes, aware of every point where their bodies connected. "In Zindari tradition," she said quietly, "when two souls are bound, they spend their first night under the stars, learning each other's rhythms." Nathan's hand found hers in the dim light. "Is that what we're doing?" "Perhaps," she admitted, "though I never imagined my soul binding would happen in a drop pod hiding from pirates." His soft laugh vibrated through his chest. "Against her, humans have a saying: life rarely gives you what you expect, but sometimes," Lana replied, turning to face him, their faces now inches apart. "It gives you what you need." The tension between them shifted, transforming into something electric and inevitable as their stars wheeled overhead and danger lurked beyond their sanctuary. Nathan and Liriana found themselves crossing boundaries neither had anticipated when their mission began. Dawn broke over their desert landscape, painting the rocky terrain in hues of amber and gold inside. The drop pod. Nathan woke first momentarily disoriented by the weight of Liriana against his chest during their night. They had shifted positions, her body now curled into his, her silver hair split across his arm. The intimacy of their position stirred something primal within him. Their conversation the previous night had ventured into territory neither had anticipated, culminating in a closeness that transcended their professional relationship. Nothing had been said explicitly, but the lingering touches, the heated glances, they had communicated more than words ever could. Liriana stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she seemed content in their position, then awareness returned and she sat up quickly, her sunset skin flushing a deeper orange. The temperature stabilized, she said unnecessarily. Nathan nodded, allowing her the pretense. I should check if our friends from yesterday have moved on. He reached for the sensor controls, but before his fingers made contact, the communication system crackled to life with an urgent signal. Emergency broadcast from Outpost Alios. The automated system announced Priority Alpha. They exchanged concerned glances. As Nathan activated the message, a static-filled hologram materialized, showing Commander Valerian, the Terran officer in charge of the joint outpost, to all allied vessels. Valerian's voice came through, strained and interrupted by weapons fire in the background. Outpost Alios is under attack by Draxian forces. We are outnumbered and an explosion rocked the transmission, requesting immediate assistance. Critical research at risk. I repeat, critical research at risk. The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving them in stunned silence. That's where we were headed, Nathan said grimly, with the cargo liner's expression had grown pale, almost ashen. Nathan, there's something you need to know. She reached for the secure compartment beneath her seat, entering a complex code about our cargo, about why I was selected for this mission. The compartment slid open, revealing not the standard supply containers they were supposedly transporting, but a sophisticated stasis unit containing vials of iridescent fluid genetic stabilizers. She explained, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. For me, Nathan frowned. I don't understand. Liriana took a deep breath. The Sundari High Council has been experimenting with accelerated reproduction cycles. They selected me for the program because of my genetic compatibility, which she hesitated with. Humans' understanding dawned slowly on Nathan's face. You're saying they paired us together deliberately because we're genetically compatible? She nodded. My reproductive cycle has been artificially enhanced. These stabilizers are necessary to ensure that any conception remains viable. Her eyes met his, challenging yet uncertain. They didn't count on you knowing my true name. They didn't count on us becoming soulbound. So this mission was never just about supplies. She confirmed it was about creating the first viable Shandari human hybrid under controlled conditions. Nathan processed this revelation, his tactical mind connecting the pieces. And the Draxians attacking the outpost. They've always opposed cross-species cooperation, Liriana said. If they learned about the program, the implications hung heavy between them. The attack wasn't random, it was targeted at the very research that had brought them together. We have to help them, Nathan said, already reaching for the ignition sequence. Liriana caught his wrist. Nathan, if we go there, you need to understand what it means for us. Her gaze was intense, unwavering. The soul binding combined with these genetic modifications, if we were to become physically intimate, conception would be almost certain. The air between them charged with unspoken possibility. Nathan covered her hand with his own. Is that what you want? He asked quietly. I volunteered for the program, she admitted, but I never expected to feel. She struggled to find the words to feel this connection, to want it to be more than just a scientific procedure. Nathan's expression softened. He reached up to trace the contours of her face, his touch reverent. Where I come from, bringing a child into the world should be an act of love, not duty. And where I come from, Lionel replied, leaning into his touch, duty and love are not mutually exclusive. The desert sun climbed higher, bathing the cockpit in golden light as they drew closer. What began as an accidental binding had evolved into something neither could have anticipated, a connection that defied their respective cultures' expectations. We should reach the outpost in 3 hours, Nathan said, reluctantly pulling away to prepare the drop pod for launch. Whatever happens there, we face it together. Liriana finished, her hand finding his as they initiated the launch sequence. As the engines roared to life and the pod lifted from its hiding place, they both understood that their mission had irrevocably changed. They were no longer just representatives of their governments, they were partners in a more profound sense, bound by ancient Tradition and facing a future neither had foreseen, the pods streaked across the desert toward Outpost Alios, where danger awaited, but so did answers and perhaps a chance to define their bond on their own terms. Outpost Alios loomed before them, a once proud structure now partially engulfed in flames. The drop pod's sensors detected sporadic weapons fire as Nathan guided them toward a secondary landing pad away from the main conflict. Draxian ships on the eastern perimeter, Lana reported, scanning the tactical display. Looks like they've breached the main laboratory wing. Nathan's jaw tightened. That's where the genetic research would be stored. They landed with a jarring thud, the pod's stealth systems activating to mask their arrival, armed with their psidams and the precious cargo of stabilizers. They moved swiftly through the outpost's emergency access tunnels. Life signs ahead, Liriana whispered, checking her scanner. Human and Zindarier signatures. They rounded a corner to find a sealed laboratory door. Nathan tapped the communication panel. Commander Reed, Terran Special Forces, we received your distress call. After a tense moment, the door slid open to reveal a small group of haggard survivors. Commander Valerian, his uniform scorched and torn, nodded grimly at their arrival. Beside him stood a female Shindari scientist, her lab coat stained with what appeared to be blue blood. Dr. Marina, Lana gasped, recognizing the scientist. You're alive, barely, the older Shindari woman replied. The Draxans came without warning. They knew exactly what to target. Nathan secured the door behind them as Lana handed over the stasis unit containing the genetic stabilizers. Dr. Marina examined them with visible relief. You brought them good. Her eyes shifted between Nathan and Lana, noting their proximity to each other. Has the binding occurred? Lana's skin flushed. How did you? Your aura patterns, Marina explained. They are synchronized. It's unmistakable to those who know what to look for. She turned to Nathan. You spoke her true name. It wasn't a question, but Nathan nodded. Anyway, Commander Valerian interrupted, we can discuss personal matters later, right? Now we need to secure the central database before the Draxians extract it. Everything about the program is stored there. What exactly is this program? Nathan demanded. Liriana told me some of it, but I get the feeling there's more. Dr. Marina and Valerian exchanged glances. The lab fell silent except for the distant sounds of combat. Subject Lana isn't just compatible with humans, Marina finally said. She's been specifically engineered to produce offspring with enhanced capabilities, telepathic bridges, accelerated healing, extended lifespan abilities that could unite our species in ways we've only theorized. Liriana stiffened beside him. Subject, you told me I was a volunteer candidate. You were, Marina insisted, but you were also the culmination of generations of genetic research. Your parents were selected for compatibility traits. Your genetic structure was optimized during embryonic development. Nathan placed a steady hand on Lana's shoulder, feeling the tension radiating through her body. So I was created for this, she said flatly, to be bound to a human and produce some kind of superchild. You were created with potential. Marina corrected. What you do with it has always been your choice. A nearby explosion rocked the laboratory, sending equipment crashing to the floor. Valerian checked the security feed. They've breached the secondary barrier. We have maybe 20 minutes before they reach us. The evacuation shuttles, Nathan asked, destroyed in the initial attack. Valerian replied grimly, our only hope is to hold out until reinforcements arrived from Proxima Station, which could be days. Marina added. Nathan assessed their situation with military precision. How much food and water do we have? Enough for 3 days, maybe 4 if we ration carefully. One of the other survivors answered. Liriana met Nathan's gaze, and unspoken conversation passing between them in the midst of danger with their future uncertain. The connection between them had only intensified. The revelation about Liriana's genetic engineering hadn't diminished his feelings. If anything, it made her strength and resilience all the more remarkable. We need to secure a defensible position, Nathan decided. Somewhere we can hold out until help arrives. The auxiliary lab has reinforced walls and its own power supply, Marina suggested, and it contains equipment that might be useful as they gathered supplies to relocate. Nathan pulled Liriana aside. Are you okay? He asked quietly. Her sunset-colored skin had padded slightly, but her eyes remained determined. I've spent my life following orders, fulfilling expectations, finding out I was literally designed for a purpose. She shook her head. It's a lot to process, whatever you were designed for, Nathan said, his voice low and intense. What matters is what you choose. Their eyes locked, the air between them charged With possibility the soul binding had created a connection, but what grew between them now was something deeper. Something neither government nor genetic programming could dictate we should move. Lana said, though she made no effort to step away from him while we still can as. They prepared to relocate to the auxiliary lab, the weight of their circumstances pressed upon them, trapped. Outnumbered, with dwindling supplies and secrets revealed, yet in the midst of crisis they'd found something neither had expected, a choice that was truly their own. Night fell over Outpost Alios, bringing an eerie quiet to the besieged facility. The auxiliary lab had proven to be a defensible position with reinforced walls and a separate power grid that kept their systems operational despite the destruction elsewhere. The survivors had established a rotation for guard duty, with Nathan taking the first watch while the others attempted to rest. Liriana found sleep impossible. Her mind raced with the revelations of the day, her engineered genetics, the soul binding. With Nathan the precarious situation they now faced, she paced the small private alcove that had once been a researcher's office, now converted to temporary sleeping quarters. "You should be resting," Nathan's voice came from the doorway. He had removed his tactical vest, standing now in just his sleeveless shirt, his muscular frame silhouetted against the dim emergency lighting. "So should you," she countered. "Isn't Valerian supposed to be on watch now?" Switched with him, couldn't sleep either. Nathan stepped into the room, letting the door slide closed behind him. The space immediately felt smaller, more intimate. Too much to process. Lana nodded, acutely aware of his proximity. "I keep thinking about what Marina said, that I was designed for this, that we were compatible by design. Does it change how you feel?" Nathan asked, his voice low and steady. She considered the question, studying his face in the soft blue glow of the emergency lights. "No," she finally answered. "If anything, it makes me more determined to choose my own path, to prove that whatever they engineered, my feelings are my own." Nathan moved closer. Close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his human body. "And what are those feelings, Lana?" Her name on his lips sent a shiver through her. Not her true name this time, just the name she used among others, yet somehow it felt equally powerful. "When you spoke my true name," she whispered, "I was terrified. Not because I didn't want to be bound to you, but because I'd never allowed myself to acknowledge how much I already was." Nathan's hand rose to cup her face, his thumb tracing the contour of her cheekbone. The touch sent a cascade of sensations through her body, heightened by her Shindari nervous system that processed tactile information differently than humans. "In my culture," she continued, her voice barely audible, "the soul binding is considered the deepest connection two beings can share, more profound than any physical union." "And in mine," Nathan replied, drawing her closer, "physical union is an expression of that connection, a way to make the invisible visible." Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling in the small space between them. The tension that had been building since that moment in the drop pod when he had spoken her true name and changed everything crested like a wave about to break. "If we do this," Lana murmured, her hands finding their way to his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the thin fabric. "You know what it could mean, what it likely will mean given my biology." Nathan's eyes, dark and intense, held hers. "I know, and I'm not afraid of that future. If it's with you." The last barrier between them dissolved with those words. Their lips met tentatively at first, then with growing certainty the differences in their physiologies created unexpected sensations. Her cooler skin against his warmth, the unique textures and tastes unfamiliar yet intoxicating. What followed was a discovery of each other that transcended their respective species, the careful removal of barriers, both physical and emotional, the whispered guidance, the gentle laughter at unexpected differences, the gasps of pleasure at surprising similarities. Through it all, Nathan treated her with a reverence that made Liriana understand why humans, despite their shorter history among the stars, had earned such respect from older species. They approached the universe and each other with a passion and tenderness that the more logical races often lacked. In the aftermath they lay entwined on the narrow cot, a tangle of sunset skin against tanned human flesh. Liriana traced patterns on Nathan's chest, marveling at how natural it felt to be with him this way. "Do you think it happened?" Nathan asked softly, his hand resting protectively over her abdomen. "There's a way to find out," she replied. "The medical scanner in the main lab area, it's sensitive enough to detect conception almost immediately, especially with my enhanced reproductive system." They dressed quietly, sharing secret smiles and lingering touches that spoke of their new intimacy. The main lab was Empty the other survivors having retreated to their own makeshift quarters for the night. Liriana activated the medical scanner, its holographic display illuminating her face with a soft glow. The scan took only seconds. When the results appeared, neither spoke for a long moment. "Well, Lana, finally," said her voice, a mixture of awe and trepidation. "It seems the geneticist knew what they were doing after all." Nathan moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder as they both stared at the confirmation floating before them. Conception successful, embryonic development already accelerated beyond normal parameters. "Are you okay with this?" he asked, his breath warm against her ear. Liriana turned in his arms, facing him with newfound determination. "I am. If you this child may have been part of someone else's plan, but now it's ours, our choice, our future." The distant sound of weapons fire reminded them of their precarious situation. They were trapped under siege with dwindling supplies and an uncertain rescue timeline, and now they carried a new life, one that both governments and their attacking Draxians would consider invaluable. "We need to get you both of you out of here," Nathan said, his protective instincts visibly heightened. "Reinforcements might not arrive in time." Liriana nodded, her tactical mind already working through possibilities. "There might be a way. The outpost has emergency escape pods designed for critical research evacuation," Valerian said. "All escape vessels were destroyed. The shuttles were," Liriana corrected, "but the pods are different, smaller, stealthier. They are not common knowledge." Hope flickered in Nathan's eyes. "We're level 3. Section D, but we'll need authorization codes which Mariner might have," Nathan concluded as they prepared to return to the others with their plan and their news. Liriana paused, placing her hand over her abdomen where their child now grew. "When I joked about being bound to you if you guess my name," she said with a soft laugh, "I never imagined it would lead to this." Nathan's smile was equal parts tenderness and determination. "I did." Morning brought startling changes. Liriana awoke with a gasp, her hand flying to her abdomen where a noticeable swell had formed overnight. Nathan, who had been dozing beside her, was immediately alert. "What's wrong?" he asked, concerned etching his features. "Hab," she whispered, pulling up her suit to reveal her stomach. What should have been barely perceptible was now unmistakable, a small but definite bump that hadn't been there the night before. Nathan stared, his expression a mixture of awe and alarm. "Is this a normal for Shindari?" "No," Liriana replied, her voice tight with worry even with accelerated gestation. "This is unprecedented." They sought out Dr. Mariner, immediately finding her already at work in the makeshift medical area. The older Shindari's eyes widened when she saw Liriana's condition. "By the ancestors," she breathed, guiding Lana to the examination table. "Their genetic modifications must be more aggressive than we calculated." The scanner hummed as it passed over Lana's abdomen, projecting a holographic image of the developing embryo. Mariner's expression grew increasingly concerned as she studied the readings. "The fetal development rate is approximately 40 times normal," she announced. "At this rate you'll reach full term in days, not months." "Days," Nathan echoed, his hand finding Liana's and squeezing gently. Marina nodded grimly. "The hybridization process is triggering accelerated development protocols that were designed to activate only under controlled conditions." She looked pointedly at the stasis unit containing the genetic stabilizers. "These were meant to regulate the process, but the soul binding has created a biological catalyst we didn't anticipate." "Can you slow it down?" Lion asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I can try to modulate it with the stabilizers, but I can't stop it entirely." Marina began preparing an injection. "This should help maintain a safe rate of development, but we need to get you to a proper medical facility within the next 72 hours." As Marina administered the stabilizer, Commander Valerian entered the lab, his expression grim. He paused, taking in the scene before him, his eyes lingering on Lion's changed physique. "I see. Congratulations are in order," he said, though his tone lacked warmth. "We need to evacuate," Nathan stated firmly. Liriana mentioned emergency escape pods. Valerian's jaw tightened. "Those pods are reserved for critical research materials." "She is critical research material," Nathan shot back, then immediately regretted his choice of words. "According to your own government's." Lana squeezed his hand in understanding. She knew he didn't see her that way. Valerian sighed heavily. "It doesn't matter anyway. I just received the final communication from Proxima Command. There will be no reinforcements The room fell silent as the implications sank in. What do you mean? One of their other survivors demanded. Both governments have classified this outpost as expendable, Valerian explained. Bitterly they are denying any knowledge of the genetic program to avoid diplomatic incidents with the Draxian Confederation. We've been disavowed. Nathan's military training kicked in, his mind already calculating alternatives. Then we used the escape pods. Get everyone out. There are only 2 pods, Valerian encountered, each designed for a maximum of 3 occupants plus minimal cargo. We have 8 survivors. Then we send 2 trips, Liriana suggested, wincing slightly as she felt another strange flutter of movement within her development that should have taken weeks happening in hours. Valerian shook his head. The launch sequence triggers an automatic beacon. The Draxians would intercept the second pod before it could clear the atmosphere. The room descended into tense discussion as they debated options. Nathan pulled Liriana aside, his voice low and urgent. You need to be on that first pod, he insisted. You and their baby. Liriana's sunset skin pulled. I'm not leaving without you. This isn't negotiable, Nathan said, his tone gentle but firm. Our child needs at least one parent to survive, and I need you, she countered, surprising herself with the raw emotion in her voice. What had begun as an accidental binding had transformed into something she couldn't bear to lose. There has to be another way. Their private conversation was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the entire facility. Warning lights flashed as the security system registered a major breach. They'd broken through the eastern perimeter, Valerian announced, checking the monitors. We have maybe 2 hours before they reach this section. Marina approached them, her expression resolute. I've prepared a modified dose of stabilizers. It should keep the pregnancy progressing at a manageable rate for approximately 36 hours. She handed the injector to Nathan. After that she'll need specialized care. Nathan nodded his thanks, tucking the device securely into his tactical vest. I have a plan, he said, addressing the entire group, but it's risky and I'll need everyone's cooperation. As he outlined his strategy, a bold combination of distraction, deception, and precisely timed maneuvers, Liriana watched him with growing admiration. This was the side of humanity that had always fascinated her. Their ability to face impossible odds with ingenuity and determination rather than resignation. It could work, Valerian admitted reluctantly when Nathan finished, but the timing would have to be perfect and would need to access the command center to override the pod launch protocols, Marina added, which is currently occupied by Draxian forces. Another survivor pointed out. Nathan's expression remained confident. Then we take it back. As the group dispersed to prepare, Lana felt another flutter of movement within her. Stronger this time, she placed her hand over their growing swell, marveling at the life developing there, a life that represented something neither government had anticipated, not just a biological hybrid but a union born of choice rather than calculation. I spoke your true name as a challenge, Nathan said softly, coming to stand beside her. I never imagined it would lead to this. Liliana smiled, leaning against him. Imagine my face when I realized my joke about marriage would become reality. Are you disappointed, he asked, a rare hint of vulnerability in his voice. She turned to face him fully, her eyes reflecting the emergency lights. I'm terrified, overwhelmed and racing against time, but I'm not disappointed. She placed his hand over her abdomen where their child grew at an impossible rate. Some things are worth the risk. The ventilation shaft was narrower than Nathan had anticipated, making their progress toward the command center painfully slow. He led the way, with Liriana following closely behind, her movements increasingly labored as her pregnancy continued its accelerated progression. Behind her came Valerian and 2 other survivors, while Marina and the remaining personnel prepared the escape pods for rapid deployment. Pull, Nathan whispered, raising his fist in the universal military signal to stop. Through the grating ahead he could see Draxian soldiers patrolling the corridor outside the command center, and they fewer than expected, which aligned with their intercepted communication. The message they decoded an hour earlier had been reveille. The attack was being carried out by a rogue Draxian faction called the Purists, who opposed any genetic experimentation. More importantly, the official Draxian government had dispatched a diplomatic vessel to intervene, expected to arrive within 3 hours if we can hold out until their diplomatic vessel arrives. Valerian had reasoned we might all walk out of here alive, but that meant securing their command center to establish communication with the incoming ship, and time was working against them in more Weighs than one. Nathan glanced back at Liriana, concerned by her pallor. You okay? She nodded, though her sunset skin had taken on an alarming ash and hue. Just uncomfortable. He didn't believe her for a second, but knew arguing would waste precious time. 2 guards at the main entrance, he reported instead. I'll create a distraction. Valerian, you and Chase take the east access point. The plan was set in motion with practiced efficiency. Nathan dropped from their ventilation shaft into an unoccupied storage room, then triggered an alarm in a distant section of the facility. As expected, one of the Draxian guards moved to investigate, leaving a single sentry at the command center door. What wasn't expected was the sudden strangled gasp from Lana as she attempted to follow him down. Nathan, she whispered urgently, her voice tight with pain. Something's happening. He turned just in time to see her clutch her abdomen, which had visibly expanded since they had entered the ventilation system. Their stabilizers were failing faster than Marina had predicted. I think Liana managed between uncontrolled breaths. The baby is coming. For a split second, Nathan froze, torn between the mission that could save everyone and the woman who had become his world. Then his training kicked in. Compartmentalizing the crisis into manageable parts. Change of plans, he announced to Valerian through their comm link. Liriana's in labor. I'm getting her to safety. You proceed with taking the command center. Negatives. Valerian responded immediately. We need you for the breach. The timing is no longer negotiable. Nathan cut him off. Your Special Forces 2 Commander, you'll figure it out. He helped Lana back into the ventilation shaft, guiding her toward a different exit point that would lead them to a secure medical bay they'd passed earlier. Her breathing had become rhythmic, controlled, a warrior managing pain through discipline. I'm sorry, she whispered as they moved. The mission isn't more important than you. Nathan finished firmly. Either of you. They had nearly reached the medical bay when the facility rocked with an explosion. Valerian's distraction more dramatic than planned. Moments later, the crack crackled with the commander's voice. Command center secured, he reported, sounding slightly winded. Minimal resistance. Most Draxian forces appear to have withdrawn to their ships. The diplomatic vessel, Nathan asked, helping Lana onto an examination table as another contraction visibly rippled across her abdomen. It's 90 minutes, Valerian confirmed. We're establishing contact now. Relief washed over Nathan, but it was short-lived as Lana cried out, her back arching in pain. The medical bay's automated systems activated, scanning her vitals and projecting alarming readings. Fetal development has reached 3rd trimester equivalent, the system announced dispassionately. Labor progression accelerated. Estimated delivery imminent. Nathan activated his Marina, we need you in medical bay 3 now. While they waited, he held Liriana's hand, wiping sweat from her brow with his free hand. Her eyes found his, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Talk to me, she requested between contractions. Distract me. Nathan smiled, brushing silver hair from her face. Did I ever tell you why I volunteered for the neural enhancement program? She shook her head, grateful for the momentary diversion. I was fascinated by xenolinguistics, alien languages. As a kid, I used to listen to recordings of different species for hours, trying to mimic their sounds. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Their military program gave me the ability to actually hear and reproduce frequencies beyond human range, but the interest was always there. So when you heard my true name, Liriana began, it was like hearing the most beautiful song I'd ever encountered. He finished. I memoized it instantly, not because of any mission objective, but because I couldn't bear to forget it. Tears gathered in Liliana's eyes, partly from pain, partly from emotion. And now you're bound to me forever because of it. Best mistake I ever made, he replied with a grin that made her heart flutter despite her discomfort. The door slid open as Marina rushed in, immediately assessing their situation. The stabilizer should have lasted longer, she muttered, preparing additional medications. The soul binding must have created a stronger catalyst than I anticipated. Another contraction sees Liriana more powerful than before. The medical scanner beeped urgently. Delivery phase initiated, the system announced, detecting hybrid physiology. Standard protocols insufficient. Marina's expression grew concerned. The baby's unique genetic structure is confusing the automated systems I'll have to deliver manually. As she prepared, the facility's communication system activated. Commander Valerian's voice echoing through the speaker's. Attention all personnel, the Draxian diplomatic vessel has arrived ahead of schedule and is requesting permission to dock. The purist faction has withdrawn from the facility. Perimeter. Nathan and Lana exchanged hopeful glances, but their moment of relief was shattered by a particularly intense contraction that drew a cry from Lana's lips. Focus on what's happening here, Marina instructed, positioning herself to assist with the delivery. The diplomats can wait. The next minutes passed in a blur of intensity as Liana's accelerated labor progressed with startling speed. Nathan remained by her side, speaking her true name softly in her ear when the pain became overwhelming, the sound now a tether between them, grounding her through the storm of sensation. One more push, Marina encouraged her professional demeanor momentarily cracking with excitement. The baby is almost here. Lana gathered her remaining strength, her sunset skin glistening with exertion as she bore down one final time. The room filled with a new sound, the first cry of a child who by all natural laws should not yet exist. It's a girl, Marina announced, her voice thick with emotion as she placed the newborn on Lana's chest. And she's perfect. The infant, impossibly small yet fully formed, had skin that shifted between human tones and sunset hues, with wisps of silver white hair crowning her delicate head. But most remarkable were her eyes when they fluttered open, human in shape but with the golden flecks characteristic of Shindari vision. She's beautiful, Nathan whispered, a ruck as tiny fingers wrapped around his much larger one. Before they could fully absorb the miracle before them, the medical bay door slid open again. Commander Valerian stood there, accompanied by a tall, regal Draxian female in diplomatic attire. Apologized for the intrusion, the Draxian said, her voice surprisingly melodic for her species, but when we learned of the accelerated birth, I insisted on coming immediately. Her gaze fell on the newborn with undisguised wonder. I am Ambassador Thaler of the Draxian Confederation, and I believe your child may be the key to peace between all our worlds. The Jiraxian diplomatic vessel glided silently through space, its elegant design a stark contrast to the utilitarian military crafts of both human and Shindari fleets. In the private quarters assigned to them, Nathan stood at the viewport, their newborn daughter cradled against his chest as he pointed out distant stars. That one there is Sol. Where my people come from, he whispered to the infant, who regarded him with eyes that seemed impossibly aware for one so young. And over there, just past that nebula, is where your mother's ancestors first learned to navigate the stars. Liriana watched from the bed, her body still recovering from the accelerated birth. The past 12 hours had been a whirlwind of revelations and decisions. Ambassador Thaler had offered them sanctuary on the Draxian homeworld, a place where their daughter would be honored as a symbol of unity rather than studied as a scientific specimen. It had seemed the perfect solution until Commander Valerian intercepted a coded transmission from Cinder High Command. Retrieval teams have been dispatched, he had informed them grimly. They're classifying both Liriana and the child as government property to be reclaimed. The memory of Nathan's face in that moment, the cold fury that had transformed his usually warm features, still sent shivers down Liriana's spine. In that instant she had glimpsed the warrior beneath, the diplomat, the protector who would move galaxies to keep his family safe. We need to make a decision, Liriana said softly, drawing Nathan's attention back to the present. The ambassador expects our answer before we reach the Draxian border. Nathan returned to the bed, carefully placing their daughter in the crook of Lana's arm. They had named her Enra, a word that existed in both their languages, meaning harmony in Shindari and referring to a constellation in human astronomy. What do you want? He asked, sitting beside them. Liriana considered the question. The Draxians offer protection, resources, a place where Enra would be respected. She stroked their daughter's silver white hair. But she would still be a symbol, a political asset, just a more benevolent version of what our governments intended. Nathan nodded, understanding her hesitation. And the alternative? We disappear, Liriana said, meeting his gaze. There are independent colonies in the outer rim where no single government holds sway, places where we could just be a family. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating, to forsake the protection of powerful allies to rely solely on themselves. It was a gamble with their daughter's future. It wouldn't be easy, Nathan warned. Would be fugitives, at least until the political situation changes. When has anything about us been easy? Lion countered with a smile. I joked about being bound to you if you guess my name, and look where that led us. Nathan laughed softly, careful not to disturb the now sleeping Enrar. Best joke anyone ever played on me. A gentle knock interrupted there for a moment. Ambassador Thaler entered at Nathan's Acknowledgement her tall frame graceful despite the ship's artificial gravity being calibrated for human comfort. We will reach the border crossing in 6 hours, Adam, she announced. Have you reached a decision? Nathan and Liriana exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them, one of the unexpected gifts of their soul binding. We have, Nathan confirmed, and we're grateful for your offer, but we've chosen a different path. If the ambassador was surprised, she hid it well. May I ask where you intend to go? We think it's better if you don't know, Liriana replied diplomatically. Ta considered this, then nodded. I understand, however I would like to offer assistance regardless. She produced a small data crystal. This contains new identities, untraceable credits and coordinates to several independent worlds where my people have unofficial contacts. Nathan accepted the crystal with genuine gratitude. Why help us this way? Because what was done to Liriana without her full knowledge was wrong, Thieler stated simply, and because your daughter represents something my people have long believed, that our species are stronger together than apart. Her gaze softened as she looked at the sleeping infant. She deserves the chance to define her own destiny. After the ambassador departed, they began preparations for their new life. Dr. Marina provided additional medical supplies and instructions for Enris' unique physiology, while Commander Valerian, despite his initial reluctance, offered tactical advice for avoiding detection. The Draxians have agreed to drop us near the Vidian Nebula, Nathan explained as he packed their meager belongings from their will take a transport to the Outer Rim colonies. Liriana nodded, her mind already racing with plans and contingencies. We'll need to establish a cover story, something believable but unremarkable. How about two scientists who met during a research expedition? Nathan suggested. Fell in love, had a child, decided to seek a quieter life away from the core systems. Not entirely untrue, Liriana amused with a smile, though I think our actual story is far more interesting. Imagine trying to explain to Enra when she's older. Nathan chuckled. Well, sweetheart, your mother joked that she'd have to marry me if I guessed her real name, and imagine my face when you actually did. Lana finished, her sunset skin warming with the memory. Their laughter mingled in the quiet room, a moment of lightness before the uncertainty ahead. As if sensing her parents' joy, Enra stirred and opened her eyes, those remarkable eyes that contained both her father's shape and her mother's golden flecks. Hours later they stood in the Draxian vessel's shuttle bay, saying their final goodbyes to those who had shared their extraordinary journey. Ambassador Thala presented them with a final gift, a small pendant for Enra inscribed with an ancient Draxian blessing for travelers. May the stars guide your path, she said formally, and may you find the freedom to write your own story. As their shuttle detached from the main vessel, carrying them toward their uncertain future, Nathan took Liriana's hand. Their daughter slept peacefully between them, unaware that her very existence had already changed the course of interstellar relations. Are you afraid? Nathan asked quietly as the stars Streport, yes, Lirian admitted, but not of what lies ahead. She squeezed his hand. I'm afraid I'll wake up and discover this was all a dream, that you never spoke my true name, that we never found each other. Nathan leaned over and whispered in her ear, not her true name this time, but 3 simple human words that carried just as much power. Liriana's sunset skin flushed with pleasure as she returned the sentiment in her own language, the melodic sounds flowing like the starlight that surrounded them as their shuttle disappeared into the vastness of space. They carried with them not just their hope for their family's future, but the seed of something greater, proof that even the most different of a species could find harmony together, creating something new and beautiful from the unexpected. And it had all begun with a joke about a